Here's a joke. If someone asks which country is the happiest in the world, a lot of people might answer North Korea. I used to think this joke was funny, but after reading economist Richard A. Easterlin's works, it doesn't seem so amusing anymore. Easterlin, often called the father of happiness economics, is the author of books like Happiness, Growth, and the Life Cycle. If we consider happiness alone, North Korea might just be the happiest country in the world, and its model could actually be the most fitting social system for humans. Before you rush to disagree, let's take a moment today to explore which social system truly brings people the most happiness. Let's explore why people in capitalist countries often express dissatisfaction with society, while those in socialist countries consistently seem to wear happy smiles. We all know that in a capitalist society, property is privately owned and everyone is chasing after more money. So the question of whether capitalism makes people happier can be simplified to this: can money make you happier? I'm guessing your answer is likely a resounding yes. Of course money can make me happier. Just give me $100 million and see. Honestly, you wouldn't even need to give me $1 billion. I'd be overjoyed with just 10 million. It seems that the idea that money can make you happier holds some truth. However, consider this. If fate gave you 10 million but granted everyone else 100 million, would you still be bubbling with happiness? Probably not. Receiving 10 million might make you ecstatic in some situations, but in others, it might lead to disappointment. Despite having the same amount of money, your happiness would be affected differently, showing that money alone cannot guarantee happiness. So, we reach two entirely opposite conclusions. On one hand, money can certainly make people happier, but on the other hand, it can't guarantee happiness. This is known as the Easterlin Paradox, a concept introduced by Richard Easterlin, an economics professor at the University of Southern California in 1974. Professor Easterlin observed that when we examine society at a single point in time, wealthier individuals generally report higher levels of happiness, indicating that happiness seems to correlate with income. However, when we look at changes over time, the picture is different. Despite ongoing economic growth and rising incomes, happiness does not necessarily increase with income. For instance, over the past 70 years in the United States, while average income has doubled, reported happiness levels have remained steady or even decreased slightly. This challenges the idea that higher income always leads to greater happiness. In China, it's a similar story. People who are middle-aged, many of whom are deeply involved in stock trading, dream of getting rich overnight. Yet, at the same time, many nostalgically look back to the pre-reform era when wages were just a few dozen yuan and meat was a luxury, feeling that society was much happier back then. On one hand, they reminisce about the times of poverty, believing they were happier when they had less, while on the other hand, they obsess over the stock market, dreaming of wealth. This paradox almost resembles a kind of mental dissonance. By now, you might have noticed the crux of the issue. Money itself doesn't inherently make people happier. Whether money boosts happiness depends on another factor. It is this factor that influences whether your happiness rises or falls when you come into money. That factor is, well, social comparison. Imagine this. Starting today, your monthly income jumps from $10,000 to $100,000, while your friends and family's incomes remain the same. In this case, you'd probably feel happier, right? Now, consider the opposite scenario. If your income stays the same, but your friends and family's incomes increase from $10,000 to $100,000 per month, your happiness might actually decrease, even though your income hasn't changed. This illustrates that you're making social comparisons, assessing your own situation by looking at others. Let's take another example. Suppose you're about to graduate and need to choose your first job. Which of the following would you choose? A. Earning $100,000 right after graduation. B. Earning $50,000 right after graduation. So, this choice seems pretty easy. Most people would clearly choose option A. But what if we add a bit more detail to the options? Option A is earning $100,000 immediately after graduation, while other graduates earn $200,000. Option B is earning $50,000 right after graduation, while other graduates earn $25,000. At this point, the decision becomes, well, a lot less straightforward, and most people would probably hesitate. This really shows that, whether we mean to or not, we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. Professor Easterlin suggests that we experience a dual effect. There's the positive impact of our own income increase on our happiness, and then there's the negative impact when others' incomes go up too. These influences affect our position in the social income hierarchy, which, in turn, kind of determines whether money actually makes us happier. Only money that improves our relative ranking can bring us true happiness. Money that doesn't change our ranking often just feels less meaningful. This really helps explain why so many Chinese stock investors experience a sense of mental dissonance. They might notice that even though their earnings have increased, they feel less happy compared to when they earned less in the past. The problem is their income has gone up, but their relative income ranking has actually fallen. They believe that gaining wealth through stock trading will bring them happiness because it could boost their position in the income hierarchy. At this point, it's pretty clear that no matter how much a capitalist society develops, it just can't guarantee happiness for everyone. When everyone's income rises at the same time, income rankings stay the same, which means no one's happiness really improves. Happiness only increases for me if my income rises relative to others. But if my income ranking goes up and my happiness increases, it also means that someone else's ranking has dropped, leading to less happiness for them. So, on average, this balance basically means that the overall happiness in society doesn't really change. Furthermore, whenever someone becomes happier, it means someone else becomes less happy. This suggests that trying to increase happiness through acquiring more money and private property is essentially a zero-sum game. This helps explain why some people view capitalism as inherently evil. In this system, one group's happiness often depends on another group's misfortune. Karl Marx argued that private property is the source of all societal ills, and that only by eliminating private property can true happiness for everyone be achieved. Next, let's consider the situation in socialism. Professor Easterlin, who studied in East Germany during his youth, had a deep understanding of its conditions. East Germany was a socialist state supported by the Soviet Union, but it collapsed in October 1990 and was integrated into West Germany, transitioning to a capitalist system. Socialist East Germany was a deeply oppressive society, where the government monitored every aspect of its citizens' lives, leaving no place untouched. There was one secret police officer for every 60 people, and citizens were constantly betraying each other. Surprisingly, after the collapse of this repressive socialist regime in 1990 to 1991 and the country's shift to a capitalist system, the happiness index of Germans sharply declined and only started to gradually return to the levels seen during the socialist era after 25 years. What could explain this? The primary reason is that under the socialist system, employment was guaranteed. Almost all working-age men and women were part of the labor force, and, unemployment was nearly non-existent. The state took care of education, healthcare, and other essential services, so people didn't have to worry about these aspects of life. However, after the transition to capitalism, the job security provided by socialism vanished. People suddenly had to find jobs on their own, worry about their children's future employment, and manage education, healthcare, and other concerns that were once handled by the state. With the loss of their familiar comfort zone, their sense of happiness naturally declined. Professor Easterlin also observed that, regardless of the political environment, when people are asked what is most crucial to their happiness, 96% mention things like earning a living, supporting their families, and health care. These concerns often consume their daily lives, leaving only 4% who focus on issues like political and civil rights. Therefore, even though East Germans gained political and civil rights after reunification, rights they previously lacked, the positive impact on their happiness was far overshadowed by the negative effects of the increased challenges in finding employment. Similarly, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, surveys conducted in Russia, Belarus, and the Baltic states showed comparable results. People expressed much higher satisfaction with life during the Soviet era than after the shift to capitalism. The reasons were similar to those in East Germany. Under Soviet rule, everyone had a job, food was assured, and daily life involved simply going to the factory to work. The demanding work left little time for other concerns, and with education and healthcare centrally managed by the state, people had fewer worries, creating an environment of relative comfort and stability. The transition to capitalism effectively pushed people out of their familiar comfort zones. The stable life they had known disintegrated almost overnight, leaving them to shoulder family responsibilities on their own without the state's structured support. This abrupt change led to a sharp decline in their overall happiness. China experienced a similar pattern. After the economic reforms, particularly between 1990 and 2015, the country's GDP grew at an unprecedented rate, doubling faster than ever before. By the end of this period, most urban households had acquired color TVs, air conditioners, washing machines, refrigerators, and computers. Despite these advancements, from 1990 to 2002, people's life satisfaction significantly declined. Although satisfaction slowly began to improve afterward, it still remained below the 1990 levels up until 2015. Some viewers might find it puzzling that despite acquiring valuable consumer goods, such as color TVs, air conditioners, washing machines, refrigerators, and computers, people's happiness could still decline. The reason is similar to the situations in East Germany and the Soviet Union. Before the reforms, all enterprises were state-owned, and urban residents had secure jobs with lifetime employment. These jobs provided extensive benefits, including housing, healthcare, pensions, and childcare, creating a mini welfare state. Following the economic reforms, even though the economy grew rapidly and incomes increased, people had to find their own jobs, purchase their own homes, and handle their own education and healthcare. This led to a decline in happiness. Some might argue that living standards have improved overall. People can now afford refrigerators, color TVs, air conditioners, and even cars. However, the problem is that while I might be driving a Toyota, if everyone around me is driving a BMW, it's difficult to feel genuinely satisfied. At this point, it becomes evident that socialism is somewhat analogous to raising livestock. All the animals receive the same feed, live in the same shelters, and don't have to worry about anything beyond following the owner's commands. They simply need to perform their tasks, like pulling the mill or the plow. Based on these examples, such a system can indeed lead to higher overall happiness. So it's possible that North Korea could be one of the happiest countries in the world. Yet, I can't help but question whether such happiness truly counts as happiness. Is a life of carefree existence, similar to that of livestock, genuinely the kind of happiness we seek? If we look at European countries, particularly the Nordic ones, we see that advanced capitalist nations, through democratic systems and equitable redistribution, can provide comprehensive social benefits such as free healthcare, free education, pensions, and unemployment support, levels of welfare far beyond what is found in North Korea. Although people in these countries might experience dissatisfaction from comparing their Toyota to someone else's BMW or their 2-story home to a neighbor's 3-story house, is it truly a misfortune to be troubled by such issues? We understand that the best literary and artistic works frequently have gripping, unpredictable narratives that evoke a spectrum of emotions such as sadness, pain, regret, and anger. We don't judge a work poorly just because it elicits negative emotions. In fact, we often celebrate those creations that deeply move us and make us endure intense emotional experiences. So, might it be that some people have a fundamentally flawed concept of happiness? Could it be that the mules and horses on a farm don't genuinely understand what happiness means? Maybe the farm owner defines the life on the farm as happiness, merely to keep them bound to it, while labeling the diverse and enriching challenges of the natural world as unhappiness. In conclusion, it's worth questioning if our views on happiness are too limited. Just as farm animals might not grasp true happiness, we may also be confined by narrow definitions. True richness could lie in embracing diverse experiences and challenges, rather than sticking to predefined notions of contentment. By expanding our perspective, we might find a deeper, more genuine happiness. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video.